When you guys are volunteering at the shelter, you're going to see a lot of different behaviors among the cats and dogs because we have so many, and each one is going to have a very different personality from another one. So when you're interacting with the cats, most of the cats in our adoption areas are going to be very friendly. They're going to be completely relaxed looking, very playful. If you take them into a room such as the visitor area, they're probably going to be climbing on you, sitting on your lap, rolling on their back, wanting you to scratch their belly, things like that. So this is very typical behavior of most of our cats that you'll be interacting with. Now, if you go back into the stray cat area, if you're assisting a staff member in those, staff only areas, then you might see some more nervous cats, some that appear very shy. Maybe they stay at the back of their kennel. They're a little bit more reserved. They usually have their body tucked into itself, making themselves appear smaller because they are nervous, especially when they first come in because it's a new environment. It's a stressful environment with lots of different smells of other pets, as well as different sounds and stuff they're not familiar with. So that's where you're going to see a more nervous, shy, worried cat. As far as the angry or unhappy cats, maybe they have hair raised on their back and tail. Their tail might be straight up. They might be hissing or growling at you through the kennel. These are going to probably be in our feral area. A lot of times they're just in the back of the cage, as far as they can be, very tucked into themselves with very big eyes. These are our feral cats. They're not socialized with humans, and it's okay because we are going to spay and neuter them and release them back to their area or adopt them out to ranchers or businesses that are looking for pest control. So these particular cats, when they're out in the community, they're not going to approach you, okay, because they are, again, not socialized with humans. But typically, seeing a very happy cat is going to be normal for you guys, whereas, a shyer cat, you'll be able to differentiate between ones that are super friendly and socialized and ones that need a little bit more socialization. When it comes to dog behaviors, some of the body language you're going to see through them is panting. They're probably very excitable dogs. Big happy eyes, not to be mixed up with whale eyes, which is a more fearful look from them, where their eyes are big and you can see the whites of their eyes. With an excited dog, you will not see the whites of their eyes typically. They might be barking, but it's more of a happy bark, and there's no low tones to it, or growling or baring teeth, things like that. They might be chasing their tail. If they're shy, they'll probably be shaking. We see that a lot with smaller dogs in their kennels. They'll kind of be at the back of the kennel and shaking a little bit. Even the big dogs will do it sometimes. But when they're shaking like that because they're, scared or shy, they're in the back of their kennel, and you'll be able to see that. Yawning, lip licking, things like that. Those are all calming behaviors that you're going to be able to see on some of our more nervous dogs. If they're submissive, these are going to be dogs that will do the submissive smile, where they're smiling. It looks like their teeth are bared, but the big difference is their eyes. Their eyes are going to be very squinty, and their body language, they'll probably be cowering down a little bit. Their back end will be lower to the floor typically when it's a submissive smile. It should be pretty distinctive to you, especially if you see a photo of a dog with a submissive smile versus a dog that's baring its teeth and much more reactive. Um, they also, a lot of times with these submissive dogs, as soon as you approach them, they lay down on the floor and they have their belly exposed to you. A lot of times there will be some urinating as well. These are all behaviors saying that I'm nervous, I'm a little fearful of you, and basically they're saying, please don't hurt me. So definitely go calm with these dogs. They're not necessarily a threat or a bite risk, but they're already nervous. We know they're nervous, so we're going to go slower with them. The timid ones that are more fearful, that are going to be in the back of the kennels, those ones are a little bit more of a bite risk. Those particular dogs are not going to have a green sticker or be housed in the adoption areas necessarily. These are more commonly dogs that have just entered the shelter, and those are going to be dogs that the staff members are working with directly in order to get them more socialized and be more comfortable in the shelter environment. Now, an aggressive dog, you will rarely see at the shelter. If you do, we're going to have a big sign on the kennel. This is a dog that's going to be housed in our stray area. And I don't necessarily want to say that they are aggressive. I'd rather say that they are more reactive, because a truly aggressive dog, the only time you will see them in the shelter is when they're in quarantine, having been brought in by animal control for being a bite case. Either they've bit another pet or they've bit a human and it has broke skin. So a truly aggressive dog is not even going to be able to be seen by volunteers, whereas a reactive dog, ones that may bite out of fear, not aggression, but out of fear, those sometimes end up in our stray areas, especially when they have just come in. It's pretty rare, but it happens. These particular ones might be growling or baring their teeth in the kennel. They might be crouched down or giving you a hard stare. Again, those whale eyes, where you can see the whites of their eyes. And if you put your hand in front of the kennel or get too close, they may lunge at the kennel door. So you are never going to see a dog like this on the adoption side, and a lot of times on stray side, it is a very brief amount of time that they display this reactive behavior, because once they calm down and know that they are in a safe environment, they tend to completely change their behavior. These might be dogs that came from an abuse case, maybe a house that is being investigated for animal cruelty or something of that sort. So we're paying attention to all these behaviors, because it's not only going to help us to keep ourselves safe, but also to better understand how they are feeling and how we can help them to become socialized and happy and ready for an adoptive family that's actually going to love them and take care of them. When it comes to behavior in a shelter environment, obviously our first concern is safety, but another major concern that is oftentimes associated with shelters is stress-induced canine compulsive behavior disorder. Long name short, we call it kennel crazy. So this particular disorder does not start right away. So it is not something they're born with or anything of that nature. This is the result of a dog who has been in a kennel for entirely too long. Dogs are very social animals. They love people. So when they're put into a very small environment where they're not allowed to go outside and alleviate, when they need to, or run around to release some of that energy, it starts taking a mental toll on them. So seeing a dog become kennel crazy, we've seen it, and we've seen it all too often. That is why we are doing what we can to always provide the dogs with lots of enrichment, as well as plenty of volunteers to come in and get them out of their kennels and get them on dog walks and play with them outside where they can run and use up some of that pent-up energy that they're storing from having to be in a kennel. So whenever we see this, some of the signs that are going to let us know that, a dog is starting to mentally break down in their kennel is repetitious behaviors. One of the things I've seen is jumping on the kennel wall, going in a circle, jumping in the wall, coming down, like making those circles. Also heightened vigilance. Maybe they're starting to bark more. Their behavior is starting to change, and they're starting to develop more negative behaviors. Poop painting is a common one. I have that in quotes. I don't know if that would be the medical term for that, But typically the dogs, especially in the adoption dog area, they're very clean in the sense that they will use one side of the kennel, the back kennel area, to go to the bathroom, whereas the front kennel, they are sleeping on that side, eating, chewing on their toys, things like that. When this starts to become a problem, this is where they're going to start alleviating themselves on both sides of the kennel. They will be stepping in it, they will be jumping on the kennel walls and essentially smearing that feces all over the kennel. This is one of the big signs that this dog is going downhill mentally. Excessive barking, whining, yipping, it's very repetitious, the same type of bark or yipping over and over and over. They might stop eating or drinking compared to what was normal for them. They might also start being more reactive. They might start growling at people, whereas they never displayed that type of behavior before. They might start being more destructive with their toys and bedding, chewing everything up. We do have dogs that come in and they are heavy chewers, but the difference will be when this particular pet who never chewed up toys before starts aggressively chewing things up and tearing things up a lot more. Another sign is teeth chattering. Their jaws will be constantly going like this, okay? That is a sign. They might be also really nippy with that too. So if you enter their kennel, maybe they're not necessarily biting your arms and hands, but they're kind of chattering on your arms and hands. Increased fatigue or sleeping. If we have a pretty high energy dog or even a normally active dog, and they start sleeping all day and just laying in their bed or on the floor and not really getting up anymore, especially when people come to their kennel, that's a big sign that they're deteriorating in there as well. And just an overall depressed appearance. For volunteers, some of these behaviors might not be obvious to you if you only seen them, twice in the entire time that they've been in the shelter. But these are definitely signs that the staff members are going to notice pretty quickly. Especially the animal care technicians, the ones that are in those kennels every single day seeing their behaviors. You get comfortable with each pet and you get to know their personalities so well that when one of these things from this list starts appearing, that's when you know we have to get this dog out of the kennel. We have to get them out on more walks. We need to increase enrichment as quickly as possible. And ultimately, number one, get them adopted immediately. Because once they start showing these behaviors, it tends to go down, they tend to go down mentally very quickly. So this is almost where we're at an emergency place, not because they're necessarily going to be dangerous towards us. Eventually they will be if we do not get this under control. So these are things to look out for. Some of these things like the teeth chattering and things, you don't necessarily want to confuse that with a puppy that's nippy. I think that these behaviors will generally be so abnormal to you as someone not familiar with dogs other than maybe your own dogs at home or people you know's dogs, that they're going to stand out to you probably. So we are watching for these things, and this is why pet personality reports are really important, because we have to continuously monitor their behavior to make sure that they do not start to deteriorate mentally in their kennel while they're waiting for a home. Typically, when it comes to housing cats versus dogs in the shelter, the cats are usually going to be able to have a longer stay before displaying severe signs of stress, and the dogs typically show them much sooner than the cats, probably just based on dogs being far more active than cats are. And cats definitely, even though they're socializing with humans and stuff, they can go for longer periods between interactions. They do sleep a lot and things like that. So some of the things we're going to notice in cats is, again, that repetitious behavior. If they're housed in cat condos, they will jump onto the shelf and jump down onto the shelf. It's just the same behavior over for a very long time. excessive meowing, or they're not meowing at all anymore. They might be having that overall depressed appearance. Um, Again, reactive behavior that was not there before. So maybe you had a cat that was super friendly and nice with everybody, and all of a sudden, when you're going into their kennel to play with them or something, they don't want to play anymore. Maybe they're swatting at you or things like that. It's when these personalities really take on a transformation that is abnormal for them that we have to really start worrying about um, how long they've been with us, and doing what we can to get them into a home where they can go back to being relaxed and stress free. Another big one is over grooming. So we'll start to see hair loss in cats. They'll just be grooming pretty much the entire time that they're awake, when they're not eating or drinking. And sometimes their eating and drinking decreases dramatically as well. Cats and dogs both love to eat typically, so when they stop doing this, a lot of times that can be a big trigger that something isn't quite right. Um, Hiding in their kennel when they would normally rub up against the kennel door wanting attention. That's also a sign of stress. So with these cats, same as the dogs, they have to start getting more socialization. They have to start getting more enrichment. We don't know when a pet is going to get adopted, and even when we're trying desperately to have pets adopted, as quickly as possible, as soon as they get spayed and neutered, making sure we're putting them out to the community as available for adoption. You just don't know from one pet to the next how long they're going to be there. So we have to make sure that we are not increasing the stress for these pets, and we're also paying attention so that we can try and attempt to do something differently to be able to keep them going a little bit longer until that adopter does finally come through. So while you guys are volunteering with us, one thing you're going to hear me talk about a lot is going to be enrichment. Okay, so enrichment is providing mental stimulation for these pets based on their natural species behavior, and it is preventing them from getting bored and unhappy in the kennel. Okay, so it's especially important for our shelter animals because they're living in a very sterile environment, and we have no idea how long these pets are going to be in our care. Some of the main benefits of offering enrichment to our shelter pets is that it is going to improve their brain development and function. It's going to enhance their learning and memory. It's going to improve their interaction with us in the environment. It's going to reduce their fear and stress, promote an increased well-being, making them much more happy. It's going to reduce their boredom, alleviate a lot of the anxiety and stress, and it's going to reduce the risk of abnormal behavior because they will have other options that are more positive to do. It is also going to lower the risk of diseases. Stress is a big issue in enhancing illnesses in pets. So most of the cats specifically will come into the shelter, and as soon as they start getting stressed out, the first thing that happens is they come down with an upper respiratory infection. The problem with this is, when you're stressed out, your immune system weakens, and when you have that many germs from all different pets from all different areas of the county coming in, it can be a very risky thing. It can be potentially deadly for these pets if their immune systems are too weak to deal with the amount of germs or the type of germ in the environment. Anytime you're dealing with any kind of animal in captivation, whether it's in an animal shelter or even in a zoo, enrichment is crucial in maintaining these pets' happiness and health. If you take away their enrichment and their ability to express their normal behaviors, you're going to deal with a lot of issues when it comes to behavior. Anytime they get stressed or bored in their kennels, this is going to lead to unwanted behaviors that are going to put them at risk of not finding an adopter. If pets are behaving badly and a potential adopter comes into the shelter, they are not going to adopt that pet. They do not want a pet that is out of control, that they feel like is going to wreak havoc on their home. So if they do get adopted because someone gives them the benefit of the doubt, there's a very good chance that they're going to get returned to the shelter. When it comes to the dogs in the shelter, there are certain breeds. It's usually dogs that are a large dog breed that tend to deteriorate a lot faster than other breeds. These are typically dogs that have higher levels of energy and are also more intelligent. A lot of these breeds are bred for a specific job, like German Shepherds are bred to work with police, so they require a lot of training and things like that, and it's really good for their behavior. These dogs are extremely intelligent, so once you put them in a kennel where they're confined and they're not getting that mental stimulation or having the space to run off a lot of that energy that they naturally have, that's when it starts to lead to bad behaviors. Now, in order to provide the type of enrichment that they need, there's a lot of things that we need to do on a daily basis to keep them happy and mentally stimulated. By doing this, by offering this enrichment, we are then able to decrease the amount of illness that they can possibly get. The more stress that these pets endure, the lower their immune system is going to get. So we definitely need to make sure, especially with our large breed dogs, that we are giving them extra attention, getting them out of the kennel as much as possible, and also providing training for them and helping them learn new things and have new experiences so that they can remain longer if they need to while waiting for an adopter. A common misconception when it comes to enrichment is that it is going to require more work, and this is simply not the case. When it comes to enrichment, it is an extremely fun and gratifying experience, not just for staff and volunteers, but for the animals as well. All we're doing is simply improving the things that we're already doing, and even those small changes can make a huge difference in the happiness and the health of a pet that's staying in the shelter. So even just simply giving them a new toy every day when you're going to visit their kennel, or offering them a different type of enrichment item each day, is going to make a huge difference in the pet's personality while they're staying at the shelter. So when it comes to cats and what they like to do naturally, eating, drinking, very top of the list for them. Sleeping is a huge one. They do spend a lot of time sleeping, scratching on things, and hunting. These are normal feline behaviors that they would have whether in the wild or as a domestic pet. So if we're enriching them with these different items, it's going to make a lot of difference in their well-being. And all of our enrichment for the cats is really going to be based off of these things that are important to felines. The majority of the enrichment items are going to be things that we create from recycled materials around the shelter or items that have been donated by the community. So some of the enrichment items that we're going to create for the cats are going to be kitty Kongs, which are plastic Easter eggs that have been donated with a couple cat treats inside of them. They're able to knock those all over around their kennel, and eventually they will bust open and then they'll get to have that treat. Placing a ping pong ball in their water bowl, they can bounce it around in there and play with it. Eventually they'll knock it out of the water bowl, but they can still continue to play with that ball all over their kennel. We recycle the cardboard trays from the wet canned cat food. Those make amazing cat beds. There's the meme that's always going around: if it fits, it sits. So we can take those cardboard boxes, we can put a little blanket in there or a piece of fabric even, and they will sleep in those things all day, every day. Also offering them kitty blankets. They love to sleep on soft surfaces versus just the kennel floor or the kennel shelf. So offering them a nice little place to tuck into and different toys that they can toss around and pretend to hunt is going to make a huge difference for these cats. More enrichment items that we create for cats is mini scratching cones. Anytime we get those little tiny traffic cones, we can wrap those in rope and they make a perfect scratching post that fits just inside their kennel. We also get carpet donated, and we will cut those into strips and either hang them on the kennel door or just lay them inside the kennel for them to scratch on. Spraying things, the carpet strips or posts with catnip spray or even some of their toys is very stimulating for them. We recycle our empty boxes from gloves, and you can throw a cat toy in there or two, and they will play with those for hours. Another thing we do is rolling up catnip in wax paper and placing them inside recycled toilet paper tubes. It's another stimulant for them and allows them for lots of opportunity for play. And then anytime anybody wants to donate empty prescription bottles with no label on them, we can throw a little bell in there and they'll play with those too for long periods of time. Typically with our cat enrichment, anything that we create for them is very versatile and able to be used amongst all the cats with equal benefits among each cat. When it comes to dogs, different breeds fall into different categories, and we may have to be more specific in the types of enrichment we offer them to be able to stimulate them in the same way as a different type of breed. Sporting dog breeds are going to be breeds that are spaniels, retrievers, setters, and pointers. Typically, we don't receive dogs in the shelter environment that are a purebred, but if we look at the dog and we take a pretty good guess on what it is based on the majority of what it appears to be, then we can kind of help sort these dogs into categories. It is not something that has to be done, but it is going to be helpful in knowing these types of breeds in case the enrichment we are offering them is not enough to stimulate them. So for a sporting breed, some of its characteristics are going to be high energy levels. These dogs are typically bred for search and rescue and hunting. So allowing them enrichment that includes playing fetch or hide and seek with you or their toys or frisbee, things like that are going to be most beneficial for these dogs. It's going to allow them to run off their high energy levels, and also, hiding dog food, pieces of dog food or little pieces of treat throughout their kennel after you have taken them on a walk will allow them to search for it later, and it'll continue to offer them enrichment even when there's someone not in the kennel with them. When it comes to hound breeds, these are going to be any kind of coonhounds, foxhounds, beagles, basset hounds, greyhounds, ridgebacks, whippets. Again, we don't always see this particular breed, especially purebreds, in the shelter, but if we have something that is dominantly a hound dog, then we are going to know that they're very high energy levels and that they were most likely bred at one point down their lineage for hunting, specifically in mammals. So some of the things that we can offer them for enrichment, if what we're doing is not enough, is some coursework or games, allowing them to jump over things in the play yards, or going around poles, things like that, offering a frisbee like a visual target, doing scent trails with them, allowing them assuming their behavior is good and they're not necessarily dragging you on a walk, you can allow them to follow a trail based on them sniffing. So if they pick up a scent trail and they're following it, feel free to take these dogs and let them lead the way without pulling on the leash, but definitely leading the trail so they can work on that. Also, hiding treats around the kennel for these guys is also going to be beneficial too, just like with the sporting dogs. You can also take a handful of dog food when you're out in the dog runs, throw it out in the dog runs, let them forage for it, let them use their scent work to find those pieces of dog food around the dog runs. The working dog breeds are going to be breeds that we do see a lot of in the shelter. These are things like Huskies and Shepherds and Boxers, Dobermans, Danes, Pyrenees. We see quite a bit of these breeds in the shelter, and especially with Shepherds and Huskies, a lot of times they do look to be pretty purebred. So this is going to be a working breed that we really want to focus on. These particular dogs are generally bred for tasks other than hunting, such as pack work or pulling or guarding, things like that. So some of the types of enrichment for these working breeds are going to be, you know, we can't really offer it in the shelter, but while they're on walks, if they had backpacks or something, that's the type of enrichment that you would probably do more if it was your own pet, just because you would have access to that type of thing. But making them do some kind of work. So if you're feeding them, giving them a puzzle feeder where they have to figure out how to make that puzzle feeder release the food is really good for these guys. They're very intelligent. So anytime you put something in front of them that is going to challenge them, it is going to be very beneficial for enrichment. They also need a lot of exercise to get out all of their energy that they have. These are very strong dogs, so they have a lot of muscle and they have a lot of energy to burn off. So getting them lots of exercise, if you are a runner, you can certainly run with these dogs, down to the gate and back to get a little bit more of that energy out. Teaching them obedience and commands is big for them also because of the intelligence and because they were bred for understanding commands. So this is very beneficial for them. Offering them frozen peanut butter Kongs, it prolongs the time that they can take to devour a treat. So these are really good things for them because it does take them a while to be able to consume the Kong, get the food or the peanut butter out of the Kong and things like that. So those are very good items for enrichment for these particular dogs, and very important since this is the breed in our large dog area that we see the most. Terriers are another breed that we do see quite a bit of. So these particular dogs do have high energy as well, and they definitely need to be taken on walks, getting out of their kennel more, especially our pit bulls. They're a larger breed as well, so they need to get out. They need to have walks. They need to burn off some of that energy. Some of the good things for these guys when it comes to enrichment is things like digging boxes. Especially in autumn when the trees start losing all their leaves, making a big pile of leaves, throwing a tree in there, and letting them forage for it and dig through that, they're going to love that. They love digging. So another good option for them also is bark boxes. Um, Bark boxes are simply multiple boxes stacked within each other. Each layer has a couple pieces of dog food or pieces of treat in between each layer, and that allows them to shred the boxes or figure out a way to get the treats out. Typically, they'll bite onto the edge of the box and rip it open and stuff like that. So that'll allow them to not only get to enjoy a treat, but it prolongs the time it takes to get that done. So when we don't have any visitors in the shelter, especially, it's a good time to take around bark boxes and put them in kennels, so that um, they have that enrichment item that prolongs their time of not having anything to do in the kennel. It prevents a lot of boredom, and it keeps them a lot happier in the kennel when they have the ability to express their normal behaviors through that play. Another good one for these guys is obedience training as well. Again, they're highly intelligent, so offering them different training is going to stimulate them mentally, um, leads to better behavior. It leads to them not deteriorating in their kennels. And with all the dogs, obedience training is going to lead to a much higher chance of adoption. When it comes to these smaller breeds, we do see a very high number of Chihuahuas in this area. As far as the other ones, we may not see them nearly as much. Every once in a while, one of these guys are going to come in, and they do usually get reclaimed pretty quickly. If not, As soon as they're spayed and neutered and their stray hold is up, they're typically adopted that same day. So we don't have to worry too much about these guys in the sense of deteriorating behaviorally and mentally in the kennel, just because their stays are just significantly shorter than our larger breed dogs. Sometimes the Chihuahuas might stay with us a little bit longer than these other breeds, but that's simply because we usually have lots of them. So with these guys, typically they are bred for companionship. They are not working dogs by any means. So some of the forms of enrichment that are going to be most beneficial for them is lots and lots of cuddling. Okay, so holding these guys will be huge. You can take them outside for walks. They cannot walk to the extent of our large dogs. And a lot of times they'll go out, they'll do what they got to do, and then they want you to pick them up and just love on them for the rest of the walk, if you want to call it that. So they're pretty easy to keep content. These dogs, you know, if there's nobody in the visitor area after they've gone out to go to the bathroom, you can always go into that visiting room and spend time with them in there. It's a much calmer space. Most of the time, these dogs just want to sit on your lap anyways, so it's more comfortable for you as well. So lots of cuddles. You guys can sit outside with them and let them look around and get some fresh air, providing them with soft bedding, large stuffed animals that they can cuddle up to. Things like that are going to be very beneficial for these guys. Obviously, all of our dogs are typically food motivated, so definitely, you know, make sure you're putting a treat in there. Because our small dogs are usually going to have a blanket in their kennel, you can always hide a treat in their blanket after you've been on a walk with them, and then they'll find that later. You can do that with the large breeds as well, but the little ones especially like it because sometimes they don't notice it right away. So leaving little treats in there for them for later is a good one, but overall just giving them lots of human contact is going to be very beneficial for these smaller breeds. When it comes to herding breeds, we do see a lot of heelers and Australian Shepherd mixes in the shelter, and as of lately, we've seen to have had a lot of collie mixes as well. So these particular dogs were originally bred to herd livestock, cattle, things like that. So they do have high energy levels, and they also are very intelligent. When it comes to training, they can learn and they can learn a lot of things. So because of this, you know, they're going to need a lot of obedience training. They're going to need rigorous exercise. You can run with them to the gate and back, but definitely plenty of walks for sure. Any kind of agility work, frisbee, fetch, these are going to be great options for these herding dogs just because they like to round things up essentially. So anytime you guys are working with the healers and things like that, definitely get them a lot of exercise, and also really important to work on those obedience commands too, because they typically have an alpha personality, so we want to make sure that they're behaving and minding their manners when it comes to humans. The humans should always be the alpha with all of these dogs, so we want to make sure that we are implementing that in our time with them. The final breed category is going to be the non-sporting dogs. So these are kind of a mix of everything that's left over. So our Boston Terriers, all Bulldogs, Shar-Peis, Chows, Poodles. The majority of these dogs are kind of rare in the shelter as well. I would say Bulldogs and Shar-Peis and maybe Chows are probably the top ones we see within the shelter. But these dogs, any kind of enrichment that works for the other dogs can usually be implemented to work with these dogs as well. So stimulating search and rescue, fetch, hide and seek with things, those are all going to be good for them as well. One of the enrichment items that we create is Crunch Socks, which is a recycled water bottle, and it's stuffed inside of a long sock and then tied up at the end. They love throwing these Crunch Socks around, and because they crinkle when they bite on them, it's just extra stimulating for them and exciting. Nyla bones are great for these dogs too. Nylabones are great for all dogs just because the way they're made, it's very difficult for a dog to chew them up. Nylabones and Kongs are great for any type of chewer. So all of those things are going to be good for them. Some of these dogs are more energetic than other. This is kind of why it's a catch-all group, just because there's some pretty distinctive differences in these particular breeds, but they're not necessarily bred for sporting and things like that. So that's where they differentiate from the other types of dogs. So anything you can do for enrichment for any of the other categories can generally be used for these guys as well. But again, each dog is a different personality, so you can always modify any of these ideas to help that dog individually. One thing we can do for every single pet in the shelter, whether it's a cat or a dog, is by providing different types of enrichment that enhance their senses. Okay, so we're talking seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling. Okay, so by providing different things for them, every once in a while changing what kennel they're in so that their view is different, spraying their bedding with a different scent or with catnip spray, offering them different types of treats or different types of toys to play with, if we're allowing them to have music in their kennels, or if you can play music on your phone softly while you're interacting in different areas. All of these things are going to go towards keeping them mentally stimulated, keeping them happy and healthy, and helping them to stay strong while they are waiting for their forever adopter to come. So just taking little steps, being mindful of the surrounding, taking a moment to think, what can I do for this pet to make things a little better? Go and do it. I mean, anything we can do for these guys to keep them calm and happy while they're with us, we have to do it. As I've said previously, we don't know how long each one will be with us. So we got to do everything we can to keep them as satisfied as possible while they're with us. That is the end for animal enrichment. So if you guys have any questions, my email is on the following slide. Thank you guys all for watching. If you ever have any questions about enrichment, ideas for enrichment, or if you want to be a part of creating enrichment items in the shelter, please let me know and we'd be happy to have you come help.